Okay, we're live. Hello, welcome to the Cinema Savvy Movie Podcast. I'm Chris Garner, joined with my co-host Tayte and we're back with another Game of Thrones discussion show. And oh boy, was this one a doozy. There was a lot of stuff going on in this one. Felt very small and self-contained compared to some episodes, but yet there's still quite a lot to talk about.
Big episode, and this is the biggest series we've had yet. I'm just going to say it. Even if they somehow manage to screw up the final 3 episodes of the series, which I highly doubt it, unless maybe they bring back in the sun.
Yeah.
But I genuinely think that it's going to be the best series we've had so far. Better than Series 4, which I think is regarded as the highest ranking series.
For me, it was quite hit and miss. Its highs were great, but its lows were pretty bad. This one's only had one considerable low for me, which I mention every episode because I will never let them forget it.
I understand that story arc, and I just want to put something out there because I'm tired of you complaining about the Dawn plot.
I hate the Dawn story.
I know the TV show and the books are meant to be 2 completely different entities, but the end result of them is going to be exactly the same. Therefore, no matter what the hell was happening in Dawn, it wasn't key to the plot.
Not necessarily. Not necessarily. The book is and has gone in different directions completely from stuff.
I know, but where they end it will be exactly the same.
I don't know. I think the books are going a different way. Anyway, for anyone new to this series, hello, welcome to it. What we do in this one, this is a Game of Thrones discussion. We break down everything that happened in the episode. So this will be incredibly spoiler heavy. If you haven't seen the episode yet, where have you been? Watch it first, come back to us because we are going to break the whole episode down. We're going to speculate on things to come in the rest of the series and probably next series as well. But yeah, how we do this, we go geographically down the map of Westeros. So we're going to start at the northernmost point and work our way down to the south. So Tate, what are we talking about first on today's episode?
We're going to start in the cold, but not quite beyond the wall, cold north. And we're starting off with, I'd say, the tour of the Starks. We've got Jon Snow, who we can just assume is a Stark now. Come on. We may as well call him Jon Stark by now. Let's be honest. Yeah. We've got Sansa and we've got Sir Davos going around and trying to get kind of like the houses on their side in the Battle of the Bastards, which is going to be coming up. And we have 2 very different scenes. I'm going to talk about the scene with House Glover first. The scene with House Glover contained... I can't remember what his actor's name, but I recognized him. He was very...
Tim McInnery from Blackadder.
Yes. I knew it was from Blackadder, but I couldn't remember his actual name. But very kind of cold from the north, very unforgiving, even though his house's loyalties lay with the Starks. And he didn't mention anything about kind of the Stark, what Sansa was doing right now, what Jon was doing right now. He only talked about what Robb had done and what his family had done in the past, which I thought was very interesting. What did you think of that scene?
Yeah, first off, Tim McInnery, sorry. I love that actor. I'm a huge Blackadder fan. He's been in a few other bits as well. And he was in, what was it, Eddie the Eagle as well. He played
yes.
Big guy, didn't he? I thought this was a great scene, and again, we could talk about this, and we're going to talk about it more later, how they're bringing loads of characters and plot threads from previous series, quite a lot of series back. In fact, this goes back to like series 1 with, I forgot his name, the other Glover, the brother to this guy, that your meat is bloody tough, that guy. So I like how they're branching back with this. My only problem with like the kind of Jon Snow stuff this episode, and it was to be expected. I think this episode was kind of not a lull, but it's building up again. This is how the series goes. I think George said this. I don't know if it was offline or on here, where the series
like a roller coaster.
It'll plateau out and then it'll build up again towards the end. And I think this was that plateau. Because all Jon Snow kind of does in this is, as you said, he just goes from place to place, groups of people to groups of people to try and get houses onto his side, and there's really not much else to it, and all of these scenes kind of play out exactly the same. I would say that out of the 3 where you have Sansa, Jon, and you have Davos, I would say that each one of these meetings, one has more to do than the other in each particular meetings. So like the first one where we meet the Wildings, for example, that's very much Jon Snow on that one, and Tormund kind of wins the crowd over to him.
Yeah.
You have Sansa with the Glover one, and she attempts at the Bear Island one, but we'll get to that in a minute. And then you have Davos with the Bear Island one. And I think that was a smart way to do it. Shows that no characters are wasted. They all give them a bit to do. But
it also shows their strength in different areas, because I would say that the first meeting with the wildlings is very tough. Everything's almost taken literally.
Yeah.
So there is no negotiations in there other than this is the situation, yes or no. And that the kind of answer that Tormund says, like when he says, "Are you sure?" Jon says, "Are you sure they'll come?" And he says, "When we say we're going to do something, we do something," and that's something that the Northerners kind of follow through with. However, you get very contrasting scenes with House Glover, which is, look, we're not going to fight for you. Like we
come to our aid.
We wept for your father and stuff like that, but your family tree line's dead. You're not a Stark, or you're not worthy of the name. So it's very interesting. And then if we can talk about one of the best scenes in the series, I'd say so far, with Lady Lyanna of Bear Island, we've got kind of a glimpse, tiniest of glimpse of what she could be like when she had the letter drafted to Stannis, saying, "We know no king or other than the King of the North, whose name is Stark." And we know it was written by a 10-year-old at the time, so we're like, okay, when are we going to meet this person? And she stole the show in this scene.
Fans are loving this character. Fans are absolutely loving this character. In the books, again, I think there's a lot more children in the kind of line of the Mormonts, and I don't know if she's sort of running the family at that point, or if she's being guided because she's still young. But it wasn't expected, at least for me. And I thought the actress played it pretty well, because I think in lesser hands, this character could have come across as really just
childish or cheesy.
Childish, try to be this big one, just try to be the big one.
A lot of people are saying this is how Northern kids should be like, especially like the Lords and stuff like that. If they've been raised from a very young age into that power, she really has grown into it. She listens to her advisors. She understands her resources. She understands kind of the risks that take place. She understands the different situations. And there was an attempt by Sansa, and Lady Lyanna says, no small talk. No. I think Sansa says, Lady Lyanna was a great beauty. I'm sure you will be one day. And she just turns around and says, my mum wasn't. She was a warrior. She followed your family. I'm going to be a warrior as well.
She's a realist, and I love that about her. And it was great as well that Sansa stood up to the forefront. Like, we keep saying that this series has been fantastic for the character of Sansa. And, she takes charge, she tries, but unstoppable force, immovable object, just gets shot down immediately. And that was great as well. And then I think Jon Snow tries again.
Jon tries, but he goes in with the, I knew your father, and she goes...
Just sees straight through it immediately.
Nah. And so Davos goes in with the very, very cool angle. He reminds her of the risks. He acts as an advisor instead of a person pleading for help. And he kind of states the situation. He says, look, this is the situation we've got. This is the situation you're going to have if you don't help us out. We know your family's kind of very strong and stuff like that. And we know that you are strong in person. We want to see that. And I think she was made aware by her dad, who he was obviously commander of the Night's Watch. He would have sent out a message to all the houses saying the White Walkers are coming. If any house was going to notice that was going to be the Mormonts. And that was going to be her noticing that. So she understands the situation up north, and she does want confirmation, because she would have obviously read the letter. She may have put it aside. Now that she's having people actually come to her and say, yeah, it's happening, especially when it's 3 different people from 3 kind of different backgrounds. That's what kind of sways her. And just to tie off the scene, 62 men.
Yeah, I have to... When she said the 62 bit, this is completely outrageous considering the size of Bear Island. I forgot how big it was and how many population it had. When she says 62 and they all go like, oh, 62, I was expecting her to go 1,000, and then they were all going to like pep up like she had 62,000 troops or something at her disposal. But she said like each troop is worth 10 men or something like that.
On the mainland. And to be honest, I would agree with her. I mean, have you seen Jorah?
Yeah, fucking beat Um,
And not only that, just to top off that scene, later on when Sansa's kind of debating what she's going to do to try and get more men, it scans over to the Ravens, and you see her there with the camp. She is going into the battlefield. She is one of those 62 men, and she is going to be fighting in the Battle of the Bastards.
Oh, so she better get some like hero moments in that battle.
Like, I want to see her. First thing she does, just straight up bow and arrow.
Yeah, she gets the victory shot. She's the one who actually kills Ramsay at the end. Like Jon Snow, full epic kill stealer. Boom, right there.
Apparently, according to the internet, everyone wants her on the Iron Throne. So
I don't know. But I think she's comfortable where she is. To be honest, I don't think she wants the throne. In all,
she might be, if one of the Starks take the throne. I reckon if she survives the battle, she'll become the Wardeness of the North. Starks will revoke that because they will move south.
And I mean, I think this series so far, like a character like this was welcome, because I'm trying to think back to this series. I don't think we've really introduced many new characters into it, which I guess makes sense because we're kind of coming to the end of this thing.
Towards the end, yeah.
It was one of my problems with Book 5 and stuff, where it starts introducing another faction with Aegon, who's a character they've cut out of the show so far. I don't think they'll ever get to him.
They've introduced Euron.
Yeah.
They've introduced the new Red Woman in Marine. They've introduced the different houses. So House Glover's new lead. They've introduced Bear Island's new lead. I would also, yeah, it's difficult to also.
They're more kind of incidental characters this series, like background characters, I would say. So I don't know if Lady Lyanna is going to get a bigger role to come. I'm sure she'll get some quippy one-liners. She almost rivaled Lady Olenna, in all honesty, with how just sarcastic she was and back talk.
Someone actually said they want a chat show with people doing their own characters in their own characters. They wanted Bronn, Lady Olenna, Tyrion, and Lady Lyanna of Bear Island.
That'd be the greatest show ever. Get it going, people. Get it going.
Quips that were just going around.
Oh, the question is who'd outquick the other person? Like, they're all so good.
I reckon Bronn would back down after a while. I reckon Tyrion would back down after a while. It would be between the Queen of Thorns and the Queen of Bear Island.
Yeah, Tyrion and Bronn would be like, let's just go to like a whorehouse or something.
Let's just go to like a bar.
Drink some wine. Yeah. So that was basically the North. Like, this is what I mean. Like,
wait a sec.
Oh,
Sansa's letter.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Massive, massive, massive spoiler here. Turn off your sound or something like that for a while, because someone has actually seen, like, flipped the letter around, enhanced it, or looked into it and translated it from kind of the scribbles. Right. Just to make you aware, the letter is going to Peter Baelish, and it is going to be asking for the Knights of the Vale.
Yeah.
I know it's kind of implied, but the person flipped the image around, and it was addressed to Lord Baelish, and it mentioned the Knights of the Vale and needing help in your aid.
Well, that makes sense. I mean, the writers haven't really been subtle with that, and I don't think it was meant to be subtle. Like, it was the first few episodes, wasn't it, where Baelish shows up and he's like, you know, by the way, I've got a big army, Knights of the Vale, they're one of the best armies in the whole kingdom. If you need my help, if you need the numbers, I've got you back, but I'm peacing out right now. And then he did that knowing glance to her as he went out. So we knew this was going to happen at some point, and just where they keep going on about that we've only got 62 from Bear Island, we've got like a couple of hundred or a couple of thousand here and there. It makes sense for him to come in.
Something else to note, the person who previously played the leader of House Manderley is being cast in for episode 9. So I know that they said they sent Raven to Hornwood and Manderley. So Manderley at least shows up. They're not sure about Hornwood, but Manderley shows up. So maybe there is a command there, or maybe he just goes in person.
I was going to say, yeah, that's a good point. I was hoping to see Manderley in this episode. I know he was going from person to person. They mentioned him earlier in the episode, and I thought hopefully they get to him, because he is kind of a prominent character in Book 5 for a couple of chapters, like how in his description and the environment and the event that happens after it. It seems to me if that's going to be in episode 9, and we both think that the Battle of the Bastards is going to be episode 9, right?
Oh, no, it's been confirmed as episode 9. Yeah. That's the title. But I think throwing Manderley into that episode might convolute it a bit. I think you should just stick to, like, sometimes episode 9's focus on one area, like Blackwater did. Yeah.
battle at the wall, and then sometimes like the Red Wedding, they still scatter about the place, which I think is what this
unless in the battle it's a moment where it looks like they're about to face off, and the Ramsay's army turns around and sees the Knights of the Vale. He then looks east and sees House Mangley. He then looks west and sees what's it called, the Knights of Riverrun, and then he knows he's surrounded.
They'll probably do that, and he'll probably still go out fighting anyway. But I really hope they don't. See, with that, and we know how Game of Thrones is with battle scenes before, due to budget limitations, they kind of...
May I remind you that this is going to be a 67-minute long episode?
Yeah, but just how you said how it might ramp up in the end.
Yeah.
And if it ends with that, I think that will be a bit of a cop-out. Kind of how Blackwater had a great lead-up to it, and what we saw of the battle was fantastic, but I always still think that the bit where Tywin rushes in at the end and just goes, the battle is over, we have won, I always found that really, really rushed. And I hope they don't do the same with this, like take the time with it and build to it naturally. Yeah. I want to see a good fight at the end of this one. But yeah, that makes sense that the letter's addressed to Baelish, absolutely. And I want to see more Littlefinger. We've had one episode with him in so far, but you know that his comeback is going to be immense when he shows up with his army. So then we move to the Riverlands, where the
grass, green grass that come to pass, and like an intro, a pre-credit scene at the very start of the episode of not Game of Thrones, some weird happy paradise type thing where they're building a church or a temple or something. They got people who are part of the faith. They're all laughing. They're all cheering. They're all like working together as a team. Then suddenly the Hound shows up, and you're just like, "Oh shit!"
Yeah. And that was a cheer. That was meant to, how that was framed, how that was shot. You know, it was a welcome return for that character because fans love him. There's still memes with him going on that I see crop up a lot.
George from the podcast pointed out that the reason why they had that pre-credit scene was because his name was in the starting credits.
Oh, was it? Yeah. Oh, I completely missed that. One thing I was going to say about that, though, did you like that intro scene, or do you think that it was kind of unceremonious to throw it straight to the off?
Needed. I've always been a fond believer that the players in the end game of Game of Thrones will be people from the first episode, Series 1. You've got a lot of people in Series 1, Episode 1. You've got the Hound, the Starks, you've got the Lannisters, you've also got Daenerys, you've got Theon, you've got all these different people all in that one episode who will all be endgame players. And I have to say, endgame player definitely with the Hound, especially now he's alive. I'm not going to be kind of coy here. He now has plot armor on him. They won't kill him off again. He's in it for the long run. Maybe he'll sacrifice himself in the end towards the very, very end. I'll talk about my tinfoil hat theory about it towards the end of the discussion in the Riverlands, or this part of the Riverlands. But the Hound's back, and he's going to be back with a vengeance. Let's just say that.
Yeah, and this has been a theory, almost a myth, a legend in the book since it was written. I think it was in A Feast for Crows, which is the 4th book that it was announced. And fans have all been debating as to whether Clegane actually lived after those events. When I initially read the books, I picked up on the hints, but I could go either way. Like, I like that Sandor Clegane is still alive. Don't get me wrong; he's a fantastic character. Yeah. That hopefully, I know you were speaking before we hit record that might not be happening now, but what it might set up for with the duel with his brother is really interesting and kind of a poetic end for either one of those characters.
I was a true believer in Clegane Bowl taking place, and I'm still hopeful that it does. However, I do not believe it'll take place this series. It might take place next series, but it won't be the trial by combat done for Cersei. That's just the honest truth. That will not happen this series. He has no reason, because of the events of this episode, he has no reason to go down to King's Landing and fight for the faith. He has no connection to them at the moment. And at the moment, to be honest, the knowledge of most of the people outside of King's Landing is the mountain's dead.
Yeah, that's true.
He's got no motivation to go there at all.
Maybe Sandor will get to the faith, though. Maybe he'll go there. Maybe he'll head there, because that's all he's known since, you know, he was fixed up by Ian.
No, it was the faith of the Seven. It wasn't the faith militant. It wasn't the Sparrows.
Yeah, I don't know. I would have still loved that if that had been the trial by combat thing. It would have been,
I'm not gonna lie, it would have been amazing. However, I think what is going to be taking place from now on might be a bit bigger.
hopefully, like, I think they've still got a plan for these two characters. I mean, if you just look at them, not only are they brothers and they shared this, well, Senator Gain was the victim of this horrible attack from Gregor, but the characters themselves have kind of died in some way and been brought back. A legit thing with Gregor in that he's basically a zombie now,
Yeah,
and brought back with science. And then you've got the Hound who has metaphorically died, and now a new person potentially. Although how this episode ends, maybe he will regress to his old ways. But yeah, I mean, I'm going to read a very, very small extract from the book here, which I thought was pretty cool. And this is clearly what they've done with this in an interesting way. This is said in book 4. You would have pitied him as well if you'd have seen him at the end. I came upon him on the trident, drawn by his cries of pain. He begged me for the gift of mercy, but I am sworn not to kill again. Instead, I bathed his fevered brow with river water and gave him wine to drink and a poultice for his wound. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but my efforts were too little and too late. The Hound died there in my arms. Now, how that is written, the persona of the Hound died. And he's a changed person now. I think in the book it's described as a very, very tall grave digger, like taller than any man. And we see that at the start of this episode. And I mean, I didn't know what was going to happen at the start of this episode, in all honesty. Like, George said that there's a pre-credit scene. You were watching it and did a commentary and said, oh my God, that first scene, I can't wait. This is going to be a great episode. So,
my exact words that first scene will break the internet.
Yeah, and I'm sure it did. The clip where he's like walking, there's one man walking with a log, and I didn't even clock on then. Like, I thought, is this a giant or something? And in all honesty, when I saw this like tower thing being constructed, I thought this was a flashback before the Tower of Joy, and we were seeing it being built. I thought that's what was going to happen, and I thought, well, I don't think Bran was in this episode though. And I thought, what would be the good of going back in the flashback when we want to be going forward? And then the camera pans round and boom, Seneca again right there, and it was amazing. I lost my mind. And not only do we have the return of him, we had a special guest character in this one.
Brilliant guest character.
Ian McShane. Now, when I saw in the credits that Ian McShane was in it, I was like, I remember him being cast. I do remember when his name was first announced, but they haven't really bigged it up. It hasn't been in much press that he's going to be in it, so I think I forgot about it. And then ultimately how his character finishes up in this episode, I remember that Ian McShane in an interview, I think he was on a chat show, he accidentally let the cat out of the bag that his character was going to die. And then he was like, oh, it's Game of Thrones. You know that my character isn't going to make it for very long. So he kind of backed out of it that way. But what did you think to Ian McShane in this? And I'm going to bring up one of George's points because he's left me some notes on what he thought on the episode. He really liked it, by the way.
Ian McShane was a brilliant part of this episode. In fact, when you look back on the episode, I think his scenes were the best acted scenes and the most drawn scenes of the entire episode. I think the monologue that he did before the Brotherhood Without Banners kind of showed up, the monologue that he said then was both haunting. It reflected the Hound's kind of life and also looked towards the future. And I think his character throughout the entire episode it fitted perfectly. It absolutely fitted perfectly. He was perfect casting for this kind of character. Someone who looks tough but is now kind of speaking in soft ways, but he is aware of his past as well. Everything about all of the scenes was just brilliantly done. There's no faults with this at all.
He's aware of his past, and he doesn't run from his past. Like in that brilliant scene where he says that I still hear those cries every night before I go to bed.
You know the beautiful death series that Game of Thrones does? Yeah, I reckon that's going to be the quote for this week.
Definitely. And I think that Ian McShane's character, kind of what you just said, it is the mirror of Seneca Gain's character. And you think back to Seneca Gain when he was the Hound and the persona where he's like, fuck the gods, fuck the king, just everything.
Yeah.
This guy, although he is a part of the Faith of the Seven, he doesn't just like hit them over the head with it. Like, he's very realistic about it. He's like, I don't know. Maybe there's one god. Maybe there's loads. I don't know what their names are. I'm just a guy. I believe that there is something higher above us, judging us and things like that.
Yeah.
So I think that's why Seneca Gain I can't ever call him Sander. I always have to go with his surname as well. It's such a cool name. I think that's why he gravitated towards that group more, and that's why he stuck with them. Because other times when we saw him with Arya, where he goes to that farm and he eats the food at the farm, then he knocks the guy out and takes the gold, I think. From him. That was a very different hound. This is a reformed hound, although by the end of the episode, it is the question of whether he is going to regress back into the ways, because he has that great debate as well with Ian McShane's character, where he's like, I think Ian McShane says, we can't fight them because we ultimately become the thing that we preach against.
Yeah.
And then the hound says, yeah, well, you also can't preach against it if you're dead. So it is that dilemma of how the character can act, but I really like that.
I feel like the hound will only kill now if necessary.
Yeah, I think it's going to have a purpose if he does it at this point, because the character's come this far, and it would be a shame if he drops off again and becomes what he did.
Either that, or he is now set on a new mission, which I will talk about.
I think when we look back at Game of Thrones now, and we keep saying this about Series 5, Series 5 was probably the lowest point of this whole entire saga of series so far, because it felt like a back step for such a lot of characters. This series, more than anything, for pretty much every single character, is a moving forward. Stepping forward. We're coming up to the end now. So again, maybe if you sort of mash 5 and 6 together, it will be stronger as like a 20-episode series. But I absolutely love everything about this. And Ian McShane as well. Now, when he was cast and when I saw him in this episode, for me personally, I was a little let down that this was such a great character. You get Ian McShane to play a character who's only sadly going to be in one episode.
Yeah.
Now, George had the opposite opinion to me on that. He liked that they got Ian McShane and that they only did use him for one episode. I can kind of see both sides of the argument, because on the one hand, when you just have him in this one episode, his character becomes a lot more memorable, and all the moments that you share with that character have a good resounding impact on the characters around him and the events that are set up from it. But here's me, Ian McShane. I love the guy. I think he's an amazing actor, and I would have liked to have seen him. In all honesty, I'd love to have seen him cast as Euron. I think that he would have been a great choice for that. And I think initially when he was cast, a lot of people were like looking at his appearance. They were going from his role in Pirates of the Caribbean on Stranger Tides. We spoke about that in our Alice review. We hate that film, but I do think he was one of the strongest things in that film. So I could definitely see him bring that more villainous role to it. But it was kind of a nice flip seeing him play a good guy ultimately, even though he had a shady past. So I think it was pretty good casting. And he is definitely one of the characters that you will remember, I think, come the end of this series.
I agree with George here. He was good for one episode. Any more episodes, and he would have lost the effect of like what he was doing to the Hound and what impact he brought from that episode. He kind of grounded himself back into kind of the world, and the end scene of him being kind of hung up, it just shows that there is still brutality in the world. Hound needs to kind of get hold of what is kind of still happening out there, and whether his new mission now is to stop that or not.
Yeah, and the people that caused all this and threw everything back into
his long-time enemies, the Brotherhood Without Banners,
who are back from Series 3. So Gendry's rowboat of forgotten characters is becoming very shallow again now, because we are bringing these characters back.
Gendry is meant to be in this series at some point. I don't know when he's going to be in
there. I don't know when they're going to bring him back. He's still rowing around Dragonstone, man. He's still just doing laps around that island.
To be honest, they've left Dragonstone. He may as well be like king of it now.
Yeah, why not? I mean, it's a big fucking kingdom. He's got a whole castle to himself. I don't know how he'd run it himself, but he'd find a way, I'm sure. But yeah, the Brotherhood Without Banners, we don't see their leader now. This is where, spoiler alert for books and possible speculation. Well, we say speculation. I think it's all but confirmed when you told me what the synopsis was for an upcoming episode. But we don't see their leader, Beric Dondarrion, or we don't see Thoros of Myr or anyone like that. This feels like a very, very different Brotherhood Without Banners. Like
Forest of Myr has been cast into one of the episodes.
Yeah.
So we will see him when Hound goes ham. But what we were kind of saying was Beric hasn't been recast in yet. We're unsure whether he's going to be there or not. We don't think he's the leader of the Brotherhood Without Banners anymore. We think that the leader might be Lady Stoneheart. And I'd just like to bring it back here to a Two Truths, One Lie game, which both Sophie Turner and Maisie Williams played. Sophie's Two Truths and One Lie, where basically the game is you make 3 statements, 2 of them are truths, 1 of them is a lie. The 3 statements are: Ramsay dies, Lady Stoneheart returns, Aya checks 3 people off her list. I highly doubt that Aya's going to check 3 people off her list.
Not at this point. Not at this point. If she's still in Bravo, it's not going to happen.
Therefore, Lady Stoneheart's probably going to return, especially with Aya's ones being Aya goes to Westeros, Aya is in the trailer more times than you see, Aya doesn't cross any more names off her list. I think it's safe to say now that Aya's probably more in the trailer more times than people have realized, and she doesn't cross any more names off her list at this stage. Therefore, like, Lady Stoneheart returns and Ramsay dies, which...
It's immense. I mean, the Lady Stoneheart thing should have happened in the final scene of Series 3. If we go... Series 4, if we go in with how it is in the book. I think it's an epilogue at the end of the book.
Let's think about it. If she'd have died in Series 3 and returned in Series 4, don't you think that's not enough time to really establish any storylines to have changed? I think the decision to completely omit her from Series... I'd say Series 4 and probably Series 5 gave you time to kind of almost forget about the character and then kind of let people go off through their own plot lines, gain some new skills, I don't know, figure out some emotions, whatever the hell Brienne's doing at the moment, because she's in the Riverlands.
Yeah.
So is Jamie, and that cast in there. I think it's the right time to bring her back. I really do. I think this is well planned. I know people weren't happy with her not being in episode 4, season 10. Sorry, season 4, episode 10. I know people weren't happy that she wasn't brought back in season 5. This is the right time. Patience is a thing that Game of Thrones does very well. I mean, we've been waiting to see the Hound since season 4, episode 10. So I think it's about time that we do see kind of Lady Stoneheart in her wrath, especially if she is commanding the Brotherhood without banners. But I would like everyone who is watching this to please put on your tinfoil hats now. As
you warned me about this before we hit record. Okay, I'm ready. I don't have a tinfoil hat, but I'm ready.
The Hound is now going to be Azor Ahai.
Okay, I should have bought a tinfoil hat for that one.
He has been reborn. One thing he's afraid of, which is really ironic, is fire. So him holding a flaming sword and conquering his fear would be very interesting, especially if he's going to be in the Riverlands and exacting vengeance.
I think he's using that axe, man. I don't think he's going to use a sword at this point. I
know, but he's going to go to the Brotherhood without banners, who does have a flaming sword.
Oh, that's a... See, this is
how on earth are the other Azor Ahai going to be able to get to that flaming sword? Jon won't be able to get to it. Hell knows. If it is Lady Stoneheart, that's Caitlyn. She will not let Jon anywhere near that. She hates him.
See, I really don't think... I think it's going to be Jon Snow, ultimately. But, I mean, the books do...
is that it's Jorah. So, you've got 3 contenders there, all who could be it. I think it will be those 3 in the end. It will be either Jorah, which is the really, really outlandish one, the Hound, which is convenient at the moment and could tie in pretty well. It'd be ironic, but it'd be very kind of cool to see the Hound conquer his fears. And may I remind you, the Hound was in episode 1, season 1. He is an endgame player. He will be a key part in the wars to come, and especially if he is going to be kind of either taking over the Brotherhood without banners or kind of taking them out, or maybe even teaming up with Lady Stoneheart. I'm not sure what the relations are. She knows that he works with the Lannisters. If she understands the story that he's been through, what he's been through, then maybe the opinions will change. Lady Stoneheart will show mercy for him, maybe because he says he's converted to the faith or anything like that. Whatever. I think that he's going to be a major part of the Brotherhood without banners, and in the next series, he will be leading them.
Yeah, I can definitely see him leading them. And the Lady Stoneheart. Yeah, it was. I don't know if he's going to be the Lord of Light. I don't know if they're going to go that far. The thing is with the character of Clegane, even in the book, which they've cut out from the show, unfortunately, in the scene last season, I think, where we have the flashback to young Cersei, where she goes and sees old Maggie the Frog, is it? Is that what her name is? The sorcerer in the woods. In the book, the sorcerer gives her another premonition that might happen and says that I think you will meet your hand at the ends of the Valonqar, which translates out to little brother. Now, this is what initially sets up Cersei's hatred for Tyrion. Now, in the show, they've kind of played it that Tyrion's mom died in childbirth, and that's one of the reasons she hates Tyrion.
Mind you, she is the oldest out of the three. Jaime is also her little brother.
Exactly, and
because she was born, she was the first twin out, wasn't she?
Yeah, and this is what the book does really well, how it sets these things up, and you think immediately you initially know who it is, but when you go into it, and the sheer amount of characters there are in the book and the show as well, of who it could be Jaime, could be Tyrion, or it could be Clegane, because he is a little brother, not to her, but it didn't specify whether it was a younger brother to her. So I think the opportunities for what Clegane could do are very intriguing with this, but I can definitely see him leading the Brotherhood, although that does mean bringing Caitlyn back and then getting rid of her straight away, which would be a bit of a strange thing to do.
I think if anything's going to happen, Lady Stoneheart will show forgiveness for the Hound, as she'll realise what he's been through. She'll understand kind of what his situation is now. That's just kind of my thoughts.
Yeah. And I mean, you brought up a great point. I don't know whether to go into it in this one because it wasn't a Bran episode, but how Bran can have a knock-on effect to things in the past. You gave me a theory that maybe he is what sent the Mad King mad.
Yeah.
I really like that theory, and if they do go that direction, I think that's a fantastic way to do it, although it does mean Bran causes everything. But this is why I love Game of Thrones, man. All these theories and speculations and stuff like that.
I'd just like to also point out I can't remember the exact words used, but for Azor Ahai, he's born underneath a burning star. Yeah. Could it mean that his path was set in the right direction when his face was held down to the fire, and that defined what he was?
Oh, so yeah, no, that's a good point. And the flaming sword one, that's the biggest one for me. And when you mentioned that Thoros of Myr, and they've pointed that out loads in the book and in the show, that Thoros of Myr wields a flaming sword. So I think I'm, you know what?
Out of convenience, we take off our tinfoil hats and we say that the Hound is in the right area to kind of initiate that prophecy. Jon Snow will not go south to just get a flaming sword on the way through. He will always carry Longclaw. That will not be on fire. You've then got to think, Jorah, how on earth would he be able to get to the Brotherhood banners unless that is what heals him in the end? I think Jorah will go to the Red Woman, or a Red Woman. Maybe he even ends up with the Jon Snow camp and the Sansa camp, and they're like, who are you? Who knows? But that still doesn't lead them down into the Riverlands, where the only person with a flaming sword, because we have a flaming flail up north, that ain't a flaming sword. We have a flaming sword in the Riverlands, and I think that's got Clegane's name on it.
Yeah, I hope so. And if this episode's told us one thing, well, with Clegane coming back, we now know who the Broken Man is. Or do you think it could be someone else? Because I don't really know who else it could be in this episode.
There was a couple of broken men in this episode. I'd say that Ian McShane's character, Brother Ray, was a broken man.
Yeah, could be Ian McShane, could be Clegane.
The Hound was a broken man. We'll go into it a bit later. But the Mountain is a broken man. We've got Theon being a broken man. I've got a theory for what happens in Braavos, which is to do with the broken man, the actual Titan of Braavos, who is a broken man. So...
Oh, that's good. Yeah, and again, we say this with the episodes as well. They are very clever with naming the episode, how you can branch into all these characters. Right, let's move to another portion of the Riverlands.
Another broken man. Hey, look, it's Jaime with his lost hand.
Yeah.
We've also got the return of Bronn, which has been long awaited. He was the only things which made Dawn bearable, I'd have to say.
I still think the ultimate bromance is Bronn and Tyrion, but you know what? I will take Bronn and Jaime as well, because although I hated the Dawn stuff in Series 5, seeing Bronn back together, that banter he had with Jaime was fantastic to watch. And so Jaime, this is what we should have got in Series 5. I think this is where Jaime is sent by Cersei to sort everything out and all the turmoil that's going on in the Riverlands, where the Blackfish has taken control of Riverrun, and he is post up there, and he is not shifting. Jaime's got to go there, bring him to justice, and take back Riverrun for the Lannisters.
I still don't understand why the Lannisters trust the phrase.
Uh, did the phrase promise them anything? I guess.
No.
We all know that you can't break an oath to the phrase. Look what happened at the Red Wedding.
No, here's the thing. The phrase only created the Red Wedding out of spite to the fact that Robb didn't marry the daughter and make the Frey family more powerful.
And Tywin had something to do with it, as well as Ramsay, as well as
Tywin made a deal because I believe it wasn't the Freys, but it was the Boltons who had Jaime held captive, and they released him. And Tywin said, "Okay, on terms of release, we'll make you Warden of the North, but I have another mission for you to do. Can you please go and basically create this plot with the Freys?" Because the Freys were pissed off, and Tywin saw an advantage there. But I don't understand why, now that Tywin's dead, why there would be any reason to side with the Freys. You'd think that that would be the Lannisters. The Lannisters wouldn't obviously want to attack there for any reason unless provoked. However, shouldn't that be kind of the Lannisters' control? Like, have more Lannister soldiers posted up north there?
I don't know, maybe their numbers are needed elsewhere or back in King's Landing at something with what's going on with the king and the faith and things like that.
No, but they've got the Tyrell army. They're not even using the Lannister army.
Well, apparently the Tyrell army consists of about like 100 to 200 guys led by Mace Tyrell.
Mace the Ace.
Mace the Ace. God, that speech was so good. But what was I going to say? With maybe they're still with the Freys because we know that the Freys do have a large army, and that can be a combining factor to give a good.
And also, if they attack the Freys, they would have no passage up north.
Exactly, and that's the thing. That is kind of the passage. You can't get across that river. I guess you can, but it's awkward. It's cumbersome. It's difficult to do. So
I think I'm not sure about my maps of Westeros. Wait a second. But I thought that the only other way to get kind of past the twins,
you have to travel like miles away, don't you? And like
you have to go through the Eyrie, don't you? Or you have to avoid it completely, go via the Greyjoys kind of bachelor pad.
So I think the Lannisters just kind of want it for convenience at the minute. But so let's get to the actual confrontation now then. So Jaime is sent there, and initially we see the Freys kind of handling everything and doing a piss poor job of it. They're not organised. Even on the route up there, Bron's saying, where are the perimeter lines? Where are the trenches? Where are all these siege? Why are they building them so slow? Everything like that. They haven't got a clue what they're doing. And they try the tactic of holding Edmure, and they're about to hang him. And they're saying, look, give up the castle, surrender now, otherwise we kill your nephew. And Blackfish is having none of it. He is just standing like a boss in place, which is kind of a heartless thing to do, but we know that there's no love lost between him and Edmure. Like we saw that in season 3. Edmure was kind of the whiny, what the word I'm looking for? He's just naive. He's just crap, basically. He is, The flaming arrow at the funeral. He can't do it. He is not really worthy of the Tully name, I would say. And Blackfish is really kind of the shining light in trying to keep this family going, to keep this force going. He knows that he doesn't have the numbers, but he is stubborn enough and he is smart enough to hold down River Run.
He's got 2 years.
I think he's waiting it out. I think he knows that something's about to happen, perhaps, and he's just gonna wait it out and see what happens. But no fight happens. Jaime shows up as well, and this is one thing I really liked. Again, calling back to previous series, when he shows up and he sees how the Freys are treating Edmure, and he says, "Have this man bathed and fed," because Jaime was a prisoner himself, and the Starks didn't show him great compassion. No. I don't think they even did bathe him, did they? He was just kind of.
No, they didn't. No.
He was just horrible conditions. So I think it's nice that Jaime shows him that compassion. And even when Edmure walks past, he looks confused as to why Jaime would show him that kind of gratitude, but he looks also thankful at the same time.
I'd have to say, you just have to remember that when bathed, people make great speeches. I mean, Jaime made that really good speech about, So you never know, Edmure may have a really good speech lined up, and he's just like, I really need a bath so I can make this speech. I'd have to say the Blackfish, he's definitely weighing it out. He's playing the long game, and massive bit of foreshadowing. Every line in this show means something. Everything does. Even the bad lines, like "you want a good girl, but you need a bad pussy," that still means something.
It means that the show writers just completely lost the fucking plot with that whole section of the narrative, and we're just
anyway. He says we've got enough resources for 2 years, and then he also says to Jamie, "Do you have 2 years?" This episode was episode 7, yes?
Yeah.
I know that we only have 2 seasons left, but if there is an episode 7 to the final series, or if there is a certain amount of time that passes, that's when Jamie will die.
He's definitely dying at some point. I'm convinced now it won't be this series. It will be next series, I think. I think it'll be
as far as foreshadowing is concerned, the line "Do you have 2 years?" says, okay, he's going to die within 2 years, which means we can limit it to the amount of episodes, or he's going to die on the episode 2 years.
Yeah.
So
and I've heard rumors regarding the next 2 series that it's going to be a half season each. Maybe
it's going to be
5 or 6 episodes.
It's going to be 8 episodes and 6 episodes, or 7 episodes and 7 episodes, something like that. But I just want to make the date the 5th of June. Next year, or sorry, 2 years time, will be when Jamie dies.
Yeah, and that's gonna be really sad, but especially if they're gonna set it up with the whole Lady Stoneheart thing with Brienne. If it does get to that stage, this again, although it's gone past the books, it is still reaching back to stuff they haven't covered yet. And when I read that bit in the book, that broke my heart, because just how far both the characters of Brienne and Jamie have come, the truce they made, the friendship they made, and now it's all going to be undone due to an oath that she made. Now, is Brienne going to break her oath? Is she going to be another oath breaker and sort of be like Jamie and go against it? We don't know, but that will be a very, very tragic send-off for Jamie if it does come to that. And another thing that I love with the Blackfish as well, when they come out, he says, like, what have you achieved from this? We've achieved nothing. And he says, no, I have achieved something. I've sized you up and saw what kind of a man you are, and I'm disappointed. I'm paraphrasing with that, but he says something like that. Brings the drawbridge back up. He is a very smart character. We haven't seen much of the Blackfish, really. We got a few episodes with him, obviously in series 3, and then he's pieced out. But it's nice to bring him back and show just what a great tactician he is and a leader of people. So I'm looking forward.
He knows how good Riverrun is defensively. He really does.
Yeah, and that's like, that is the key part of the Riverlands, isn't it? That is sort of like that, and the Freys, the twins. They are the 2 focal points of that portion of the map. So if he keeps that and he waits it out long enough and sees what happens, then he is going to maintain that. And the Lannisters have lost another location. So speaking of the Lannisters, shall we course on down to King's Landing,
let's start off with Marjorie? Okay, if we're talking about Lannisters, let's start off with Cersei. Cersei is lost.
Or do you think it would make more sense to go? Because there's a bit with Marjorie before, which kind of sets up Olenna and what's happening.
Okay, yeah, we'll go with that then.
Yeah.
Let's just say that Marjorie's playing the long game.
Yeah, she is. Oh, Natalie Dormer was fantastic. That she plays the character perfectly, but this is where she really came to the forefront for me in this series.
I never believed that she was signing with the Faith fully. Just at the moment she made that expression on the steps in front of the church, it was surprised. She thought, oh, this is not part of the plan. You guys are not meant to be here. She obviously knew she was not doing her walk of faith, which is why her hair wasn't cut. She was in nice clothing. She had it planned out, and she thought, okay, so it's taken a slight turn. And she saw that as, okay, they're now going to attack Lady Olenna. I need to somehow get a message to her, but I know it's going to be very difficult. The High Sparrow thinks he is manipulating her. I'm not sure whether he can see it or not, whether she is or not, but she is
I was just going to say, I don't know whether he sees it or not yet at this point.
She's playing it so well, and everyone always foreshadows back to this when I'm reading through Reddit. But in Series 4, Episode 1, they're talking about wedding gifts possibly given to her by Joffrey, and she says, if I get given a necklace from Joffrey, the likelihood is I'm going to get a string of dead sparrows around my neck.
Oh, man, I didn't even think of that. That's great. That is
so... She's going to win out this. She's going to win this, and Cersei is going to lose.
I'm gonna have to go back and watch all my other series of Game of Thrones, aren't I, and see what I can pick up on. That thought never even crossed my mind, but that is great if that foreshadows that.
Dude, you need to get on these internet theories. They're really good.
I do. I don't. I just sort of watch the episode and go with my very limited knowledge of the books. I've read the books, but they're very hazy at this point. That's sort of what I have to go on. But you're right with how Marjorie is playing the Sparrow at his own game at this point, and I'm not quite sure which faction is winning because it seems like they're very level pegging at the minute. And the High Sparrow is such a complex character in this series, especially where he's like Littlefinger. I don't know what's going on in this guy's head. Like, he is probably 100 steps ahead of everyone else. I think out of all the characters we've had in Game of Thrones so far, Littlefinger is the smartest one, but literally right below him is the High Sparrow, and he's really showed that off this series. I don't know whether he's aware of what Marjorie is doing. I want to give Marjorie some credit, but also I don't want to take that credit away from the High Sparrow himself. I think they very much know what's going on with each one, but maybe they've seen some kind of mutual interest in how they're playing off one of each other at the minute. So I'm not really sure how that's all going to pan out ultimately. Hopefully with the dead sparrows around the neck, because this guy needs to go. Seriously, he needs to go.
Very, very, very quickly. Do you think that something bad will happen to Lady Olenna before they leave King's Landing? Do you reckon that will set things off? I
really, really hope not. I absolutely love Diana Rigg. She embodies this character. She's been one of the best characters out of all 6 seasons so far. But this is Game of Thrones, you know, and it loves offing our favourite characters. And I think that would definitely be a curveball. I don't think fans would see it, and I think it definitely would set up this huge task of what Marjorie's got to overcome, and would definitely play into the stakes of it. And narratively, it would make sense with sort of her farewell in this episode. And I thought both of those characters played that perfectly. It's in the bit where Septa Olenna is basically shadowing everything Marjorie's doing, making sure she doesn't put a foot out of line and making sure there's no deceptions going on. Olenna's having none of it. She's like, I can bring guards in here right now and have them beat you on the floor. And they keep doing it, and they'll only stop when I tell them, if I tell them at all. And she's like, let's go out of here, and like go to walk outside. She's just following her there. And at that moment, it's kind of heartbreaking. Lady Olenna thinks that she's lost her granddaughter to the faith. Like, she's been...
Then she sees the rose.
She sees the rose, and also in that one moment, it's one of my favourite bits of this series. It's where she grabs hold of her grandmother's hands and she like squeezes a little bit, and she's like, you just, in that one action and that determined look, it's like, I haven't forgot who I am. Trust me on this. I'm going to get us out of this. I'm going to sort it all out. And Lady Olenna, you know, she's taught her granddaughter. She's taught her all the ways of deception and how to act and things like that in public. So immediately there, she knew. And she was like, it's right for me to leave and go back to Highgarden right now. And that bit, as you just said, the bit where she looks at the rose was fantastic. A brilliant cap off to that scene. And then we get another little bit punctuated straight after, which you can go into if you want, with where she meets up with Cersei, because I definitely think that those two characters needed some kind of interaction with each other. And Lady Olenna does leave.
Basically, Cersei has lost.
Yeah.
She admits it for the first time, which is interesting. She says, look, I made a mistake. I still think Cersei is also playing her game. I think...
Oh, yeah, she'll never stop.
We need to go back to the fact that Tommen was spoken to by the High Sparrow, and Tommen blurted out whatever the High Sparrow said to Cersei. That's the High Sparrow's game playing there. I wonder whether it was to do with the death of Joffrey and who killed Joffrey and who plotted to kill Joffrey. Maybe not mentioning Littlefinger's name, but definitely saying it was Lady Olenna Tyrell.
Oh, and that would definitely filter in if Tommen spilled the beans and gets Olenna taken out. Yeah.
But Tommen wouldn't get Olenna taken out because he's too involved with the church. He's too infatuated by Marjorie to do anything kind of wrong in that section. Therefore, it's left on Cersei's shoulders to kind of...
This is fantastic. See, I completely forgot about that whole secret. I think we talked about that on the podcast, didn't we?
Yeah.
And I said, like, I didn't even realize there was a secret. I'd forgotten about that scene. So again, that's something that appears so trivial at the time. and it might have that knock-on effect. And you know what? I think you're right. I mean, you've been pretty much right with every prediction so far. We'll see if you're right on the Santa game being the Lord of Light one, because that's really, really out there. I can't wait to get to the Are You one in a minute and see what's happening with that one. But yeah, and that would be ultimate revenge. But then again, is Cersei smart enough to know that she needs this alliance with the Tyrells right now?
What she initially planned was the Tyrells would storm the city. As soon as the Walk of Shame would take place, the citizens would be unhappy because the Tyrell presence there. She asked for the Tyrell army to be there. Interesting. What would happen was the Tyrell army would attack the High Sparrow. These citizens of the city would revolt. And then when everything kind of looks lost, the citizens taking on the Tyrells, whoever wins out, the Lannisters just step in and take back their power.
Yeah, absolutely.
That perfectly worked out. However, the High Sparrow was playing his own game. Now, based off that, the new game is stay in cahoots with the Tyrells. They have money and resources for the Lannisters' kind of kingdom. They're kind of still funding them, so they still have that need. Also, the fact that she wants to kill Lady Olenna personally. I think that's pretty clear. Yet she can't do it without being really blunt on the nose. Just, She has to do it connivingly.
Like the Blackfish, she's got to wait this one out.
Yeah,
she's got to wait for the right moment. And you've convinced me now. I think that definitely will happen. Maybe not this series, but I think it will definitely come earlier part of next series if it does happen. But I did like those two actors, Diana Rigg and Lena Headey are two fantastic actors.
Yeah.
And all the time, every meeting they have with each other is brilliant to watch. And at the minute, I know you've said like it might all be part of a plan, but we do see that change in Cersei where Olenna brings up that I remember your smirking face when they carried my children off to the dungeons.
Yeah.
And now how the tables have turned, you know, and now you're working with me. So I like how they played that. Lena Headey's great. She's one of my favorite actresses. Played that fantastically. We've got Trial by Hype on the
That was Michael Gameball, but I'm not down for the Claim Ball anymore. I want it to happen, but I don't think it will. I think that was basically what I was saying.
I still think it will happen somehow. I'm not quite sure how, no, because you bring up a good point about how he doesn't sort of have any connection to the faith at this point.
Here's what's going to happen with the Trial by Combat, because Trial by Combat is actually scheduled to happen episode 10 as part of the synopsis. By the way, the synopsis leaks which have been going up, they've been in German and they've been translated. That's all that's happened.
Yeah.
I can't remember what TV company leaked it, but they leaked the synopsis, they leaked the episode names of people who've been able to kind of translate across that. But looking at the trailers, there's a picture of Lancel holding the kind of breastplate stretcher thing, which he's turned into a weapon. And there is also a scene in the next episode where you see the Mountain walking into the throne room with two dents, which kind of look like something that a breastplate stretcher would kind of do to you. Don't think Lancel's winning that fight. I think Lancel's going to die next episode.
He is going to die. I don't know what that's going to do to Uncle Kevin as well, Kevin Lannister. That being his son and everything, and hoping that he'll break out of the...
Next episode, Cersei chooses violence. Now,
yeah.
The trial. The trial by combat will go as follows. They will pick the Mountain, obviously, as their kind of hero. The Faith will pick Loras. The Faith will pick Loras because Loras is broken, and they will say the only way that you can kind of return back to the world of the living, which he will do anything for, is through repenting and fighting for the gods.
And him being a Lannister, that's going to have just a double effect.
No, he's a Tyrell.
Oh, Loras, sorry. No, I thought you said Lancel. Sorry.
No,
yeah.
No, Lancel's dead. Don't worry about Lancel. No, Loras. Loras will be... And that will cause confliction there. Or the even wackier theory, I'd say the High Sparrow has a very, very big hold on Tommen. If he manages to convince Tommen to be the champion, that is Cersei losing either way.
I don't think Cersei will do it.
No, listen to this, because this is the real one here. Cersei would then have to let Tommen win and destroy herself, or make the Mountain win and destroy herself mentally. Both could end up with her burning down the city out of rage and hate.
I think that the king's always exempt from trial by combats, though. I think people fight on his behalf.
Fair enough.
I'm not sure on that one. I mean, that would be cool if it did amount to that, and that would be a great thing on the character.
Loras is a safe bet.
I think Loras is a safe bet because we've only seen him in one episode so far. And I definitely think they have more planned for him for this series, and I think that would make sense to bring Loras back into it and be kind of heartbreaking on the Tyrells, which is ultimately what Cersei wants. So we've kind of lingered in King's Landing for quite a while. We've got 2 other things to talk about. We're going to try and breeze through it as quick as we can. We get a nice, quick little scene with Theon and Yara in Volantis.
Very tough love. That's all I got from that. It was big time tough love. It was throughout the entire series. It's been like, can we get the old Theon back? Can we please get the old Theon back? And it's just like a very, very slight hint in the eye of the old Theon from this episode. That's it. That's all we're given. And I reckon when he gets to Meereen, he'll meet up with Varys. He'll meet up with Grey Worm. And those are 2 big people in power who don't have anything down there. And I think that will help kind of build him back up again and turn him back into the old Theon.
And I think it will be very smart on the writing that they're kind of pairing and grouping all these characters up that have kind of similar interests and similar problems. But no, I really like the scene. At first, I didn't quite know where it was. You told me it was Volantis before we hit recording. And Yara is just being an absolute boss right there. She is just loving life. She is just going for it. I love the character of Yara. And additionally, like, I hate Yara when she's a dick to Theon, because we all really like Theon at this point. I would hope, like, we know that he's paid for what he's done.
Yara, it's all banter.
It is all banter, but like she says, like, "Oh, what's this? Doesn't tickle your interest now, brother." And I was like, "Oh, you bitch!" And then as soon as I said that, she went like, "Look, brother. Okay, I'm sorry for saying that. Okay, I don't mean it really. You know, it's just bants." But I'm like, she says like, "I will never hurt you, brother," and I'm like, "No, you won't hurt him, but you'll just continue to break him down mentally." And she's like, "You know, you're not imprisoned anymore. Get over it." And I'm like, he has been going through this for what, years? I don't even know what time scale's like.
3 seasons. 3 seasons. He started series 3.
I meant it in the context of like the actual events. Like, it could have been years, could have been months. I'm not even sure. I would say years. But he kind of drinks from the bottomless cup because he is just taking massive swigs out of this thing, and the quantity in that glass is just not going down. Yeah. So maybe that's a metaphor. Maybe it's showing Theon being more optimistic.
Maybe.
I don't know. But I thought it was a nice little scene. Didn't really need to be in the episode, in all honesty. We didn't really need
to
at this point.
It was just to kind of show, okay, they are now here.
Yeah, I mean, the bulk of the things that happen in this episode are in King's Landing, the Riverlands, and the stuff in the north. Everything else just kind of is incidental, but nevertheless, I thought it was a nice...
Braavos, although we'll move on to Braavos in a very quick second, but Braavos was a small yet huge scene.
Yeah, we'll move on to that now. I just want to say that Yara got one of my favourite lines in this episode. I can't remember it word for word, but she says, "You'll never find an ass like that in the Iron Islands," or something like that. And just how she was acting this episode was fantastic. That was brilliant stuff. Let's get on to Braavos, because I know you've got a lot to say in this scene. Shall I go into what I briefly thought of it? Because I know you're going to go much more in depth, and I want to see. Okay, so shocker, everyone. Arya gets stabbed the fuck up in this episode. Or does she? Now, I watched the episode. This happened, took me completely by surprise. And we were talking about this. I didn't think this scene, again, needed to be in the episode, because this struck me like the Daenerys scene from the previous episode, where her character had nothing to do in the episode.
Not for me. No, I'd say, no, it was needed. It was definitely needed.
Don't get me wrong. I love the Arya stuff. I've said on the podcast before that the Arya stuff this season has been among some of my favourite stuff this season. And we see the waif stabbing Arya multiple times in the abdomen. Arya gets out of it. She rolls over the bridge into the water, and she's clutching her side and just struggling away. And that's kind of where we leave it off until next episode, where some Assassin's Creed stuff's going down. As soon as I saw that, I wondered, was that actually Arya getting stabbed? Or is Arya doing the stabbing? I'm not sure. I think that Arya is the one who gets stabbed just because of the sheer look of panic on her face afterwards and how she acts. She acts very naturalistically if someone just got suddenly stabbed. And ultimately, I think the waif has done it. She's showing revenge because we saw that she'd overheard what Arya said in the previous episode during the meet up with the actors.
Yeah.
I think that the waif did actually stab Arya there, but ultimately, I think we've said this before, this isn't going to be Arya's initiation. This is going to be the waif's initiation. And I think when Jaqen H'ghar hears of this, he is going to punish the waif by killing her and stripping her of her face. And I think that Arya will remain alive because the waif has ultimately broken everything that Jaqen H'ghar told Arya about. He says you can't just willy-nilly go out and kill anyone. The death has to be demanded. The target has to be demanded by the many-faced god. And she has gone against that, and I think she's going to be punished because of it. Whereas Arya hasn't killed anyone yet, but she's sort of choosing who to kill in a different way. I don't know. I'm just kind of rambling off the top of my head here. You go into your theory. Is it kind of similar to mine, or are you going in a different direction?
A man asks for a third name, and he says his own.
Okay.
Arya named Jaqen H'ghar as the third man to be killed. He refused, and she kind of still helped him out. But for him, there was no names mentioned. He is going to die because of Arya. He's going to sacrifice himself, whether he comes back as another face or anything like that. That may have already happened with him kind of drinking the poison in the previous series.
Yeah.
However, the person who gets stabbed is definitely not Arya. Let's be honest here. Arya kind of covers herself in a dark room because she knows she's going to be hunted down. In these scenes, whoever Arya was, this person who was wearing Arya's face, was walking around confidently, with a lot of money, without needle, speaking very kind of bravosy, saying, you're a Westerosi, instead of saying you're from Westeros or where from Westeros are you, or something like that. Very confident, face out in public, not wearing another face to kind of cover up or even hide, not wearing like a headscarf or anything like that, trying to keep face just very open, very open. Once she gets stabbed, she tucks out, rolls over the bridge. She then kind of crawls over, makes sure that there's a blood trail. That's something that she does do. She makes sure that people see her bleeding out in the streets. That will mean word will get out. The waif is clever. She will follow on to that blood trail. She'll hear, oh, she survived? Okay, I'll follow the blood trail. We see in the trailer Arya with a handprint smeared across the wall, covered in blood. We know now that that is going to be Arya kind of leaving a trail. I'd just like to also point out, the person who got stabbed was Jaqen H'ghar. I still do believe that the waif is the one who's being trialed here. He said, make the death quick. The waif twisted the knife, stabbed in the abdomen. If it was going to be quick, it would be across the throat. It would be across the wrist.
Yeah.
No, it was a couple of times the abdomen and twisting of the knife.
That was revenge. That was sheer hatred.
The waif has failed her tests, and Arya, the actual Arya, Jaqen H'ghar will probably lead the waif to where Arya actually is in the dark. Arya's had her blind combat training. She will beat her ass, or whether Arya will then lead her across the city to wherever Needle is and then beat her ass in the dark. Because I can guarantee you, in that fight, both of them will be blind. Arya will come out on top.
Yeah. And all that training will have paid off for all the scenes that everyone said it was dragging. That is a great theory. Again, man, you're so good with these theories. I'm just going to come to you for every theory now and just be like, bro, what's going to happen in 3 seasons' time? And you'll tell me. I really like that.
Nothing will happen in 3 series time because it's only going for another 2 series.
This is going to be a sad day when this series. What am I going to watch after this? What, Daredevil? That's it. That's all I've got after this. But no, I think that's cool, and I definitely think we're kind of similar there. You've gone into much more depth of how it's most likely going to play out because you think logically of how it's built up from the previous scenes.
Yeah.
I think we're both in agreement that this will ultimately be the waif's test and not Arya's. So I'm loving that stuff. Next episode, she's jumping over rooftops and everything like that, pure Assassin's Creed style, and even got like a little bit of an Assassin's Creed motif in this one where she's walking through the street being stabbed, and she's looking at everyone because she doesn't know if there's going to be another assassin or if they're blending in. Really reminds me of playing some online on those games. I think that's basically it. I think we've covered everything. We've probably gone on longer than we expected to, even though there wasn't really much in terms of jumping around locations. This one felt, as I said,
it was a heavy story episode.
Yeah, it felt very much more self-contained, this one, more building to things to come. But it was done in a good way. It was in an effective way. They brought a lot of characters back, a lot of plot lines back. And Ian McShane, you can't go wrong with Ian McShane. He was a fantastic addition to this one episode. So that's kind of been my thoughts on the episode. Another solid episode in Season 6 run so far. Looking forward to seeing where it's going. We should say, Tate, there is a chance that you might not be on the podcast next week.
Next week and possibly the week after, dependent on internet access.
What am I going to do for my speculation? You have to be.
No.
If you can get on the podcast at all, that would be great, because these are really, really fun to do. George will be back on the next one, but it would be great if we could get the three of us back as it is ramping up towards the end of the season, because a lot of stuff will be happening. We know it. So yeah, that'll do it for our podcast on our discussion on Game of Thrones. Be sure to comment, subscribe, let us know what you thought of this episode. What did you think of some of the familiar faces returning? And if you have any other speculation, please do drop us your theories in the comments below. We'll try and get replied to, and we might give you a shout out on the next podcast too. In terms of what's happening with the channel, we'll be getting back to film reviews. I think it's Conjuring 2 out next week. I will be at that one. Tate, you can't get to that one, but I don't be at that one even if you could. I'm not sure if George will be at that one or if we can get Tom to that, because me and Tom have kind of been doing all the big horror film reviews at the minute with The Witch and The Forest that have come out. So I can't wait for Conjuring 2. We'll be on that one. And also the end of this month, we mentioned this last time, episode 3 of Timestamp Zero. The link to get voting is in the description below. Please get voting. It's still, I think last time I checked, it was still very, very close. So it's all to play for in this one. Very briefly, while you have a look for that, Timestamp Zero is a show we do once at the end of every month, where each time we nominate 5 films each. We put the vote out to you, and you get to decide which one we do a commentary on. We basically all just sit down on a live stream, pop the movie in, discuss it, and sometimes first watch it, like we did with our Rush one, which you can find in that previous video.
Well, at the moment, it's The Thing 1982 version, John Carpenter's, on 3 votes, American Psycho on 2 votes, Braveheart, Rocky, and Terminator all on 1 vote.
Okay, so we do have one leading the way at the minute, but that is still very, very close. That will take place on June 26th. It's always the last Sunday of every month. As I said, please do get your votes in for that. You'll find the straw poll link in the description. So, yeah, that'll do it for our video this week. Tate, again, hopefully we can get you back on next week, but if not, I'm sure you'll be on some other kind of video before you leave. And, yeah, that'll do it from us. So until next time, thanks for watching.